So today I have got Will Yeske. He is a combat veteran with a unit that has relieved me out of many combat zones, the 82nd. 11-year combat veteran. He is an author and a serial entrepreneur. Let's go ahead and bring on Will Yeske. Hey, how's it going, man?
Donald, it's going great. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. So let's start out before we get into the book and everything. Let's start out with your military career, man. What made you come in the military?
Oh man. You know, my mom swears up and down that it was this particular, and maybe it was, but there was this particular exercise I ended up going to that was I've never seen anything like this since. But it was some reservists doing a war game. One of my dad's business partners was a reservist, and I didn't know this until later, but he was like a full bird colonel. I had no idea. Um, But he brought us to this war game thing, and they're, full on helicopters and like tanks and guys running across and whatnot. And they had a machine gun pit with an M60 in it that we could go ahead and the kids could fire off. You know what I mean? What 10, 12-year-old isn't gonna go ballistic on a on a belt fit M60? Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah, man. What happened to those kind of recruiting days, man? That's the way to do it.
Right. Bring it back.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, man. So what year did you come in?
So I didn't come in until a little later. I was actually going to join the Marines right out of high school. My cousin Jeremy was a Marine. So, I mean, a little bit of that had to do with it. I saw him go from a tall, skinny Asian kid to this like jacked, running, like superhuman. And I was like, whoa, hey, what
Yeah,
happened there?
thorough.
Um, yeah, I mean, I took the ASVAB. I was hot on it, and I was just waiting to turn 18 to be like, all right, well, guess what? Bye-bye. See ya.
Yeah,
And um, that I was kind of talked out of it. I was like, "Hey, let's go to college. We'll pay for it, and this and that. And if you still want to go in as an officer down the road, like we'll fully support you." And they knew what was going on. They were tricky. There's psyops.
yeah,
They knew exactly what was going to happen. So yeah, the college sweetheart and the yeah, okay, I'm good. Let's let life settle in. But
yep.
then she left,
Psyop.
and yeah, I know, right? And I started spiraling and I was like, "Oh, man." Like, at that time, I was racing cars, with Subaru, and prior to that, I've been with, BMW, but on the pit crew.
Mhm.
Um, but just that fast lifestyle and everything, and I started getting involved in just the wrong crowd, doing the wrong stuff, and everything up to that point had kinda been about me. And I was like, I always wanted to join the military. What's holding you back, man? Like, you can't do it forever. And there's a war on right now, but so what? This is everything that you said you wanted to do. Just do it. And that's when I went down to the recruiting office and I was like, "Hey, I want to go be a Green Beret. I gotta get rid of the house and close the business down and stuff, but I'll be ready by this date." And the guy just looked at me and he was like, "What?" So we started going through the process, and I ended up, you know, it, I aced the ASVAB. I think I got like 2 things wrong on it. Um, and he's like, "You could do anything in the military you want." And I'm like, "No, I told you I want to go be a Green Beret." He just kind of shook his head. He's like, "Okay." So I
So
signed up on a 18X contract. Yeah.
yeah, you did, huh? Well, that blows my mind, man. I came in '94, so that stuff did not happen. It was impossible. You had to be a PFC before you could even be eligible to go SF.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, after 9/11 and everything, when they opened it up, it never even dawned on me until the first guest I had on here said right out of, he did the same thing. Basic
Mhm.
training, AIT, went through all the selection courses and everything, and yep, off he went, and then
Yeah.
20 years later he was retiring, and 2 months after my show he was getting out of the military. He spent 20 years as a Green Beret running and gunning, and it
Yeah.
just blew my mind. I said, holy cow, we really have been fighting long enough that somebody could enter basic training in special forces and retire a full 20 years later as a Green Beret. That is just unheard of, you
It's
know?
pretty wild. It's pretty wild. I know, well, and they look down on some of the X-ray stuff, but the thing is if you look back, I think they had the program in the '70s as well, like the same exact program. Yeah, it's like they bring it out, and then I guess, during your time it went away, and they had those, hey, there was a point to where it could only be what combat engineers and infantry were the only two MOSs they would pull from, and then they sort of opened it up and to the soft skill side, like across the board. They're like, hey, if you can hack it, like why not? And they actually did. Like they kind of multiplied their capabilities that way, just in the fact that people are already cross trained in a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
and you know. But I ended up getting hurt at some point out in Sopsey. I think it was land nav. I passed Sopsey, went through it and stuff, but the selection date was coming, and I went to sick call, and they're like, "Oh, hey, man, like you're kind of borderline." And I'm like, "Well, we're leaving for selection in a week." And he's like, "No, it's up to you." And I was like, "Can you just kind of give me a profile until then? And I'll just hit the next date." And the commander talked to me about it. That was there, and they okayed everything, and I ended up in med hold. And almost like 2 weeks later, it might have even been like a week later. I think it was right before that selection class left. They dropped everybody in med hold. They just came through and were like, "There's too many malingerers. Like everybody's going." I'm like, "Wait, what?
Whoa.
No, like, no, 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 no." And I mean, I brought it up. With the cadre that was there, I'm not dropping names, but man, with the cadre that was there, the two that were there when I was there, they weren't having it. It was like, too bad. See ya. Um, but it was good. I actually, after this deployment, I ended up going back, and smoked selection. It was, and I came back with a lot more tools, to bring with me.
Okay. Well, you're probably pretty familiar with the unit that I was in within the 160th. We were your over glorified Uber.
Well, we actually did stuff with the 160th quite a bit out there. Oh my god. And I actually, I mean, just to be like full, I passed selection. I was in the queue. I didn't fully make it through the queue all the way, man. I washed out. Oh man, I was in the queue for like 2 years. I mean, we're talking, this was in there a long time.
Yeah, people think it's like basic training AIT. What
Mm-mm.
Green Beret? No, there is a long process to do this whole process, man.
Yes. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, all that 160th stuff and all that the other units and stuff that you guys work with, that was all what came back with the black lines. I'm like, no. Of
Yep.
course,
Yeah,
there's
man.
plenty more stories in there, but I was a little disappointed. Everybody likes the cool guys.
Yeah, yeah. It was the best part of my career. I will, that side of the military is by far the budget's the biggest, and the life experiences are the greatest. So, you
Yeah.
know, my hat's off to anybody that goes to that side, because it's the best side of the military. It's the big boy program, you know.
Yes, it is.
So I absolutely loved it, man. So, what year was this your first deployment, or had you deployed before that?
Nope. This was first deployment. So I got to the Deuce in December of '08. It was like right during their ball or something. It was crazy because we ended up sitting around all day. And then like I think it was 9 o'clock at night when the first sergeant finally came in and saw us. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And this guy's dressed in his class A's, with some whiskey on his breath. And I'm like, are you serious? Like we got held over since 9 o'clock this morning for this? You gotta be kidding me. Um, but it was a really good unit. They were tight. First Sergeant McAllister was like super disciplined, but we soon found out the reasons why. I mean, you have to have that discipline instilled and that tightness within there for the foundation, the basics. Because if you don't have that, it's gonna fall apart when it starts to hit the fan.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And this one was '09 to 10, so from September '09 to September 10, and we ended up entering the Argendob, in December of '09. So
So let's talk a little bit about this particular deployment. And I know
yeah.
I'm going your bio, because I intentionally didn't read all of it because I wanted to talk specifically about this part. So in this part, it says, that "damn the valley" was a phrase regularly uttered by the men that spent any amount of time in the, and I know I'm going to mess this up, the Arghan Dam River Valley during the deployment of Two Fury of Afghanistan in 2009, 2010. The valley has claimed bodies from the troops of Alexander the Great, the British Empire, and more recently, the Russian army. So a lot of people don't realize how much history and how much war has happened in Afghanistan. Let's talk real kind of briefly, kind of describe the area where you were at, and why is this kind of like the Bermuda Triangle for people invading Afghanistan?
Well, I mean, a lot of this has to do with the fact that we if you go back to the beginning of the deployment, we were actually slated for Iraq,
Okay.
and executive orders were cut from President Obama because they had the surge into Kandahar coming. So they moved us to this advise and assist, and we ended up in Helmand province. Helmand province is, I mean, very flat, very dusty, your standard desert type environment. But then when you go to the Arghandab and you're looking at, these mountain ranges, that we had an OP that sat up there to where, you're up there and you're looking down and you're seeing helicopters below you, and you're
Hmm.
like, huh, like, what are they doing? And they're like, yeah, they're at max altitude. And you're like, wait, what? They're like, yeah, like we're higher than they can fly because the air is so thin. And
Yep.
it just starts to blow your mind. So not only do you have the mountain ranges and the heights and everything, but then you come down and there's these villages nested in these valleys, and there's farmers and there's pomegranate fields and there's grape fields that, if you've ever seen the grape fields in Afghanistan, they're perfect to just hunker down and wait and throw an ambush out, and then split, and you won't even see anybody just because of how the terrain and stuff goes. But between the rural type area where we were, in these farmer fields and all of these walls, and the back cover has one of these walls. Like, these walls were like, no shit, 10 feet tall, and we're having to cross these things, and the farmers would get pissed if we started taking chunks out of their walls. And like, sometimes if you took a chunk out of the wall, you have to worry about, all right, like, is someone going to fill this chunk back in, but with an IED in that bad boy? So
Yeah.
like, and the teams would do it. Like, I mean, they're the very first one we hit, December 26th, 2009. We lost Specialist Jason Johnston. They had a large charge up in the wall, daisy chained to a small initiator down on the footpath where you came in. And I mean, we can get into that. But I'm going to go back to the terrain and what you were saying there. Any it's such a hard region to move in, and if you actually look on the social campaign, there's a grid map on there of our AO,
Hmm.
and when you look at how small of an area we had, but just with how much activity we had, it was nuts, and it was just strange because across the river, they would never try to attack us directly. It was always lay in ordnance. There was one, a few instances, like there was one describing in one where they started the fight off with tossing a grenade over the wall and stuff. That didn't end so hot. But I mean, for us it was okay, but man, um yeah, that was crazy. That was we had a 240 gunner shoulder firing down into the orchard because he couldn't traverse the gun low enough to like get
Yeah.
down at the guys, and he's got AKs racking back at him and like splinters hitting him in the face. And he was like, I thought I was done, man. I thought I was done. It was just why. And here I am below them because they were on the roof of the building, and I'm below them on the radio. Hey, we're in contact.
Yeah. And that was the early stages problem that we did experience in Afghanistan. And a lot of people didn't realize that especially Operation Red Wing, we put ourselves in situations where we set up fobs that we could not protect. They really
Mm.
weren't fobs. They were outposts that we couldn't protect them. We didn't have the high ground, we didn't have the terrain knowledge, and we were trying to hold ground while we were moving forward and moving through, and it became impossible to hold them for long periods of time.
Mm.
And it sounds to me that this was just another area where it wasn't an ideal to place, but we tried to keep it and maintain it, and it seemed like other countries did the same thing, but it
Well,
becomes a rough
thi-
area.
this particular one, there was so much stacked against, like, even the guys before us. So if you look at the guys that we replaced, there's an article out on the news. It's called Colonel Harry Tennell's Ill-Fated Stryker Brigade, and these are the guys we replaced. So our battalion commander had been at one time General Stanley McChrystal's aide.
Mhm.
So he reached out to him when we were in Helmand Province because he was trying to get us into Marja. And he's like, "Hey, man, we were working out of Lashkargah, and he went to the Brit commander, and they didn't want to deal with us. So we went to the Marines, and they were like, a bunch of paratroopers on the battlefield, cowboys, like, just stay out of it." And we're like, "Come on, man, like, get us into the fight." So he didn't want us in Marja, so he kind of turned and was like, "Hey, sir, like, I got some hungry paratroopers here, like, want to get into it. Let's go. We're going up and down this highway. We've been in, a few ticks, but nothing crazy." Um, and he's like, "Well, we're moving into Kandahar. I got a spot for you." And we replaced, 5th ID out there, and they had been rolling in strikers. And
Yeah.
if you look at a striker and then you go back and you look at Russian BMPs,
Mhm.
what does a striker look like to you?
Real similar.
Yeah, very so. It almost looks like a modernized BMP.
Yeah.
So here these guys are rolling through the Argendob, which, if you look at the history books, I think it was 87. There's the Russian Battle of the Argendob, and they lost like a brigade's worth of troops in there, including Afghan counterparts they were working with. I mean, if you start breaking it all down, you're like, wow, this looks extremely familiar.
Yeah.
Um, and we went into the valley and we ended up establishing what was Cop Ware. And that, from like what you were saying there with undefendable places, that's where wasn't like that. It was defendable. And we had the OPs, we had people up on the mountain watching, Overwatch and some other stuff. So, but in the beginning there, the HESCO barriers that they brought in, you can see it in a bunch of the pictures. They're just flapping in the wind. There's nothing in them. We had no way to fill those things. So
Yeah.
we had no outer security on us.
Yeah.
And it took a hot minute to get contractors in to fill those things. And at one point, when we first got there, the first sergeant was trying to get us to fill them by hand. I'm like,
Yeah.
so they
Hesco,
was,
it would take you months to fill one, you know?
yeah. Yeah. Oh, they filled one. It was like 3 or 4 days later with a work party of like 7 guys working on it 24/7, where we would rotate. And it just these work duties that, like, the amount people don't understand that the workload and stuff. And even when we moved out, so we started out in established Copware, but then we ended up being split off, and we took second platoon's place at Cop Johnston, and then
Mhm.
second platoon moved to Ware to kind of give us a little bit of a break. But then we started realizing a lot of the activity was coming from the Del Cache area, which we can name it DK. Um, so they were like, "Hey, we got to establish something out of there." And that's where they pushed second platoon out to DK to cover that area. Wasn't too long after, actually, we had a suicide bomber incident, um, with that took out Sergeant Alan Thomas and Specialist Will Ross, and that was one that we were on a KLE out at DK. It's myself and Lieutenant Demarest was running it, and Sergeant Thomas was the squad leader and third squad. And we went out to DK, and they were at a blocking intersection, and I went in with the LT, and I can't remember who we used as a scribe for that one, but we're in there in this meeting. All right. And we were maybe in there for maybe 5 minutes, and boom, and we come running out, into the aftermath. But pulling everything out and talking to everybody and pulling the situation apart, the guy that had approached the suicide bomber, just the techniques they would use, he had the pressure plates were on his knees. So when they told him to stop, he stopped, and they knew something was wrong. And that it was the Afghan police counterpart that actually racked his weapon. The machine gunner kind of hesitated, and the Afghan was the one that racked it. And this guy put his hands up, and he went to his knees, and then put the pressure plates on his knees, and just, and
Wow.
machine gunner Jordan Flake, he was like, he saw this guy's rib cage just like flying through the air. And I know afterwards, um, after everything, the dust settled and whatnot, and we're out there and everything, I'm doing a blood sweep on Flake, and there's this guy's ear on his shoulder. And I'm like, and he's like, "Oh, what was that?" And I put my bag down on it real quick. I pulled my bag off and put it down. And I'm like, it's nothing, dude. Just freaking checking him over. But I mean, there's pieces of this dude on this guy. And it was just like, man,
Yeah.
crazy. What for? Why?
Yeah. I mean, well, and that's the other thing too. I can't remember who I was talking about with this, but it's a whole different world when you're fighting a military that um is part of a government, and they're fighting for a country. But you're fighting for a group of people that believe the ultimate goal is to die. So they have nothing to lose. They,
Yeah.
they are marching towards heaven, and as
Hmm.
long as they die in combat, going down like a warrior, life is about to be good. And so it's not like you're going to talk your way out of this. There's not no negotiating with this. So it's a different type of combat, man, because it's you don't know who it is, you don't know who they are because they're not in a uniform. They're,
Hmm.
it could be a farmer, it could be a terrorist. You don't know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. An AK-47 is the shotgun of America. Everybody has one. You know.
Oh yeah. No, we even what we had in Helmand province in that firefight, we had a 14-year-old kid, you know?
Yep.
And that's one of the ones we ended up saving, actually. But I mean, like this kid just picked up in jihad, and sure enough, we brought him back to the Brit aid station and dropped him off there, and they said they released him 3 days later, and we're like, well, that guy's gonna come back a bomber for sure.
Yep.
I mean, he was, phew,
Yeah.
yeah,
It is unfortunate, man, and it's a no-win situation. And unfortunately, I don't see the end of it. That country's been fighting for, as we just talked about, years and years and years. And whether it be America or another country, there'll be another country in there fighting with them somewhere.
well, they're very unified. Like, I mean, it's that tribal, that they're, that
Oh,
that tribal type mentality. But if you give them a common enemy, they're very
yeah,
good about banding together, and then the common enemy leaves and they go back to fighting themselves.
yeah,
And it's just crazy. You know,
yeah,
it's, I don't know if there's really, it's crazy to see. And it's weird to think that maybe if something like in the very beginning, General Dustum there, if they hadn't have taken him out, where would this have gone? Who really knows? Who knows? What would a unified Afghanistan look like on its own?
yeah,
Um, will we ever find out?
yeah.
Yeah.
And not this go around. Maybe next go around. Who knows? So
Yeah.
let me ask you this, man. At what point during at any time as this was going on, let me ask you that any time during
Yeah.
this deployment, did you ever sit there and go, hmm, we should write a book about this place? Or did that come years later down the road, you know? That
This was like a prophecy, man. And it was I actually did not I never wanted to write this thing. But I will say at one point on Cop Johnston, Sergeant Robert Muscle, he like literally threw this out there in the universe, and the universe was like, "Oh, okay." Um, and I don't remember like at what point, but I remember it in my head exactly what was going on, at the time. And he goes, guys, like 10 years from now, we're gonna see a book about all this with Yeske's name on the cover. And I'm like, dude, there is no way. And this isn't even like bullshit, it sounds like, yeah, okay, guy, but no, I'm like not even messing around. Like it's too crazy to not be true. It's just wild. Um, I honestly I thought he would've or we had this medic with us. He got sent over from Charlie Company, Doc Schultz, hell of a guy, just really good dude. He reminded me of, Private Joker, from, yeah,
Full Metal.
there's that philosophy. Yeah, I know. It's just it's funny, good amount of humor. He would occasionally just show up for patrol with sneakers, and the platoon sergeant wouldn't realize until we were already out there. He's just rolling out in these white New Balances, and we're like, "Bro, seriously?"
He wanted to be light on his feet, man.
Oh, he sure did. Yeah. Nah, Doc Schultz was awesome. He actually I saw him recently, and the weirdest thing, I was doing one of the classes, with Columbia Business School, and, when this thing came up, he was like, "Hey, I'm a professor, or I'm an assistant professor, but I'm going for my master's." And I'm like, "In what?" And he's like, "Writing." Like, "Really?" I'm like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "Columbia." I'm like, "Wait, hold on. You're at Columbia with writing?" He's like, "Yeah, and I'm graduating on this day." And I'm like, that's it's so weird because I was in New York for that. So I got to see him walk the stage, like, and I actually
Well,
snuck into, because it's a ticketed event for Columbia. I snuck into that bad boy. Like, he's like, "There's no way you're getting by everybody." I'm like, "Just wait, man. Listen for attaboy Jake when you cross the line." And sure enough,
there
I'm
you
up
go.
upstairs, "Attaboy."
Man, you're a Green Beret, man. Of course you snuck in.
No, I'm not a Green Beret. I was almost a Green Beret, almost.
So I thought you said you went you so
I
after
went
the
back past selection,
oh, okay.
uh, yeah,
Right. That's
was in it for 2 years, washed
right.
out just prior. Just,
That's right.
boo.
Yeah, yeah. It look, the fact that you made it through selection, what is the washout rate? Even in
Oh,
the
man.
is like still like 70%, and those were like when they were taking high numbers,
I was
because
gonna say that's way beyond our class was so our class was a small class. It started with 460 people. We ended with 97.
okay, yeah. I
Yeah.
know the numbers are extremely low,
Yeah.
and I
Yep.
know during the heat of the war on terrorism between Iraq and Afghanistan, they did take more than they normally did. But before 9/11, it was not uncommon to see under 10
Yeah.
people graduating,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was very small, very, very small classes and stuff, and I mean, it's just, um, you can't they even say it themselves, and I think that they're kinda kicking themselves for some of the stuff that's going on over there now with the culture end of things, um, is that you cannot mass produce special operations, and you really can't.
No, you cannot. I look, so the 160th, when I went, it was a volunteer time. You went through their little selection, which is nothing like what you went through. It was 5 weeks. If you made it, you made it. It wasn't like were really selected. It was you graduated or you didn't graduate.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
um, when they didn't get rid of that, but at some point, they opened up another battalion in Washington State, and they couldn't get enough people to volunteer to get that battalion off the ground. And so
Mm,
they opened it up to DA Select. And when they did that, we started having people pissing hot. We started
mhm.
having the sick call rangers. I mean,
Yeah.
they started having regular Army problems.
Yep. Yeah.
I
Yeah. There,
literally,
there, there has to be a selection process. Anything like that, there has to be a selection process, and there has to be like a rigorous standard, and it's got to be met. Like, I mean, I've seen it across the board, and with anything that you're doing that's a cut above the rest, you have to have that barrier to entry.
yep,
And that
I,
exists in the civilian side too. I mean, the exact same, like, you gotta go through these steps
yep.
and in this process to get there. People just don't realize.
I
Do the
had a
work.
soldier that would fail 2 PT tests and then pass the third. And I remember one time where we were climbing ropes, and he would grab a hold of the rope and then just dangle there, not
Oh my
on the ground.
god.
And I'm like,
Just
"You
pulling
can't
a dead fish.
even get off the ground." And I finally pulled him aside. I said, "Look, man," I said, "after the third time, I get it." I said, "You don't wanna be here." I said, "What is your problem with this place?" He said, "I don't wanna be a part of a unit where I have to go through a course just to be here." And so it took me a while, but I finally got him down the road, right? And he was
Yeah,
in.
bye-bye.
It was literally like 4 or 5 months later, I seen him marching a form or running, doing PT, running a formation down the road with E5 stripes. I just shook my head, man. I'm like, man, that bar is low. But yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
What are you gonna
and
do,
you can imagine the caliber. I mean, we'd obviously not have enough to feed the army and have the military we have, but man, we'd have a lot stronger military if we had a selection course for the whole military.
Well, I mean, you're gonna get turds anywhere. Like, even ones that got through selection and are, I don't know if it's like maybe they lose it along the way or something and are able to kind of BS their way here and there. I'm not really sure, but I mean, there's turds everywhere, even in man, even in places like, CAG and that
Oh
end of things. They
yeah,
seem to somehow slip through the poop seems to slip through the cracks.
yeah. They shine until they get there, and then they just let it fly. Yep. So I'm assuming you come back. Did the book happen after the military, after you got out, or were you still
Oh
in
yeah.
the? Okay.
No,
So
no, no. Book happened way down the road. Yeah.
so was this your last deployment? Your only deployment, or did you deploy again after this one?
No, that was it.
That
That
was
was
it.
literally yep.
So when did you get out? What year did you get out in the military?
So I left active in 15
15.
and then did reserve until 18,
I did some reserve
which,
time.
oh, yeah, so
I do.
Not
Well,
a
it did.
bad group of people, but, like, when you don't know what right looks like,
Yeah.
what do you have to gauge off of? And I was just like, "Oh my god." There was a reason why they used me for all the tacticals training and the ranges.
I I did it at the other end. I did it before I went active. So like
Ooh.
I literally remember seeing like a guy that did like 56 push-ups, and everybody was like, "Holy cow, man. Wow." You know? And even I was like, "Holy shit, man." And then like he was running the 2 mile, and I mean, I don't know, he ran it in like 13 something, and everybody was like, and then I get
Yeah, yeah.
active, and I'm like, you know, drill sergeants are like 56, that's it, you know, and I'm like, now I see, I
Yeah,
learned.
yeah. Go till you can't go no more.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah,
man.
it's a different. That's another world too, you know.
It is, but it's, I mean, there's that whole end. I mean, I just you have me thinking about this one PT test that I was taking. So I'm missing a finger, All right. Pinky
Mhm.
finger, not from combat. This was something that happened when I was like 14 years old, and I was able to they made me, oh my gosh, like I think I had a 2-star sign off on my stuff to be able to get into the military, especially on an 18X contract. But it was out of Camp McCall, and I'm doing push-ups, and this guy is like, he stops counting, and I'm still pushing, and I'm like, hey guys, come look at this freaking guy. All the other guys administering the PT tests come over and they all start harassing me and laugh. He's like, "Oh, what do you think you're doing? Freaking, there ain't no way." Like, I'm still pushing. Like, are they counting this stuff? And I have no idea. I mean, he just at one point was just like, "Just get up, you're freaking good," you know. But it was just like they were harassing me the whole time, waiting for me to. It was all mind games.
It is.
Fun stuff. Fun
Yeah.
stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Man, I miss those days.
They're
Even
fun times.
even through, the 160, they did the same thing, like the 2 mile, they had a guy counting your time when you crossed at the 2 mile, but the finish line was like another half a mile around. So where we thought the end was actually 2.5 miles. So when we crossed, there would be, another half a mile. You're like, holy shit, I've never ran that take that long to run, and they would watch to
Yeah.
see how we reacted to a shit time when the guy standing at the 2 mile point really got your real time.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
yeah,
funny.
man. Yeah. So after you get out, how did the book come about? Let's get to how the book. Did you decide to start writing it, or did somebody approach you about it?
So I when I was getting my undergrad, I got
Hmm.
out, kind of floundered a little bit at first and was like, all right, what am I going to do? I went to go back working on cars because I'm like, I know how to work on cars. So I might as well like have some money coming in and can do that. And the funniest thing, I literally, it was like everything went wrong that day. I came in, I had a good resume, I had a good backing. The guy's like, yeah, I'll try you out. Why not? And this was all because the command when I left, I was reassigned to the Deuce at one point in my last 8 months, okay?
Hmm.
And they wouldn't let me go and try out for they wouldn't let me go to these Raytheon. I'm like, "I'm moving to Maryland. There's Aberdeen Proving Ground right around the area. I need to
Yep.
go to these interviews with Khaki. I got Raytheon. There's, oh, I'm trying to think what I can't remember the other big one out there. But, they wouldn't let me go for these things. I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me." Um, when I out processed, I had 76 days of leave because nobody ever, I kinda knew the guy.
Yeah.
So I had 76 days of leave. They would only let me take 30. I'm like, "Guys, like, stop. You're killing me here." Um, and ended up going to this job, and day one, like, "You are just not working out, man." And the owner looked at me and he's like, "Why don't you just go back to doing what you were doing?" Yeah, like,
Wow.
it took a lot. I almost reached across that freaking desk, and I was just like, "It's not worth it, dude. Let's just walk away. Just walk away."
Wow. Day one of a job.
Fired, done, like, "Hey, you piece of shit." And I'm like, "Man, like, you gotta be kidding me." And having to go back with a wife that's pregnant, about to give birth here, or I'm trying to think. No, yeah, about to give birth. And I'm like, "Man, I look like garbage." And
Yeah.
having to come back and say that. Um, and I think, yeah, so I ended up from there, I did the postal office for a small amount of time just while I got my stuff together for school.
Mhm.
And then it was school. And during school, I had pretty much such a poor transition experience out of the military that I was like, I helped a few people during that time as well. And I'm like, all these loopholes and all the different stuff and the things I used within the GI Bill program and like using the GI Bill, but also applying for Pell Grants and also applying for scholarships and, like, stacking that on top so that you actually had a way to get by decent, decently while you're in school, especially with a new kid in the house. A wife went back to school and for nursing,
Hmm.
and became a nurse. And from there, like, as soon as she's graduating, I graduated business school in 2.5 years, really would have been two, but 2.5 years, which as soon as I get out with my degree, COVID hits. So all of those corporate marketing jobs, there's like a hiring freeze. Everybody goes remote. They stop hiring completely for marketing. And I'm just like, all right, where do I pivot now?
Yeah, yeah, and
And
getting at
yeah,
because I know through your bio, you're like really big is into like an entrepreneur. You're into business.
yeah,
That's where your passion is.
you
So
got to be able to adapt. You got to be able to pivot. And that's a huge thing. Huge. Because I mean, from there, like most people like, "Oh, okay," but, starting up a company during COVID that's like, "Hey, I wanna help you survive COVID." Like, "What? I got enough problems. Why do I need a marketer?"
yeah,
So showing the local small businesses on where you can provide that value and stuff, you become a very good salesman very quickly. And it's just small stuff. You might just start with the small stuff, like giving them a lot of this small guys, they didn't even have presence on like Google Maps, you know,
yeah,
and giving them that, and all of a sudden they just doubled their traffic into their business or the amount of orders that they're getting. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. There might be something to this.
yeah,
So it's almost the same thing as like that rewarding part of working with your hands or that you get in the military to where you have that purpose. You're helping somebody buy and it's rewarding. You're getting to see them reap these benefits from the work that you've done. And you can clearly see the correlation. And, that's a good feeling, and I liked doing that. And that's sort of, I mean, it was during the undergrad that I wrote that other book. I never published it, even though
mhm,
my old CO is like, hey, now's the time. Um, yeah, I know, right? I'm like, well, tell Schuster about it. We'll see. But that kind of led into me thinking that, hey, if I'm doing this stuff, 2.5 years through business school, that's not bad. That's pretty good. Most civilians take 5 at least. Um, I'm like, all right, well, maybe there's something here. Maybe we're shortchanging ourselves. And seeing that a lot of the guys that I know, they would be like, well, I'm gonna go to community college or something like that. I'm like, man, you're selling yourself short. You have that work ethic. And
yeah,
even at some of these good universities and stuff, literally all these kids got to do is show up and do the work. I'm like, how are you failing? I don't get it.
yeah,
Like there was one in particular where, I mean, he was a super smart kid. And he didn't have any problem in the failing end, but there was a marketing scholarship. And I had actually told him about it. It was so funny because I'm like, man, I just put in for this marketing scholarship. You should check it out. Like, I guarantee you they'd give it to you. And it was like a day later, the dean of the marketing department came in and personally handed him a letter and was like, "Hey, you should really check this out." And walked out. It was like 2 people in that class. It was him and one other person. And I asked him, I'm like, "Hey, what was in the letter?" And he's like, "It's that scholarship you told me about." I'm like, "They're literally telling you they want to give you money,
yeah,
like $1,500." I'm like, "And for a college student, and you could use it for whatever you want."
yeah,
You got to be kidding me. And when I got mine, uh I was like, I was stoked, and I went to him and I'm like, "Hey man, did you end up getting your scholarship?" He's like, I never applied, man." Like, it's a one page that you literally could have just typed in your student ID. Like, what? Why? And just that drive to put things out. And that's why I ended up, Cornell was the first stop. I did a certificate program with Cornell and then went forward to Columbia and did this. It's it's just it's kind of in their certificate, but it's into a program to where you actually end up being alumni, and it's you can put it towards, graduate stuff and all that. So I mean, that's really what I wanted it for, was the networking. But to be able to do that and to be at a school like that and to be like, guys, you can be here too. Like, just apply yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. A lot of people don't realize it starts by getting up. Get up out of bed,
Yep.
and everything else will be easier. Just get up. It starts there.
Right time, right place, right uniform
Goes a
is
lot.
like the baseline, but you would be surprised on how long of a way it goes in normal everyday, everybody else's life.
Yeah. You are absolutely right. Man, I'm gonna tell you, man, this I knew we were gonna talk about the and I knew we were gonna talk about
We've
uh
barely touched on this thing. We've been
but
talking all around it.
yeah, there's so many life lessons here. The civilian world is absolutely like you said, and so many soldiers have got those same stories. Maybe not as harsh as what you encountered when you went to your first job and the guy literally was like, "You're fucking a douche. Get the fuck out." On day one. But that same mentality is there, you know.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this on my show before too. We all give other branches shit. That's internally we all do that.
Yeah.
And I give the Navy probably the most shit. But
Oh
I will tell
yeah.
in all honesty, I did try to go to the Navy about year 8, 7 of my army. And
Okay.
the reason why was I wanted a little bit more technology. The
Yes.
the Army is not about technology, they're about speed. Take
Yes.
big engine out, put big engine in, get vehicle back on the combat zone.
Yep.
Cared about. And I wanted more of, let's tear it apart, let's fix the problem, and let's put it back together. You know,
Mhm.
and that was the Navy and Air Force and stuff like that. And the Air Force ain't gonna take prior service. So I went to the Navy recruiter. And the only reason why I didn't go is because they couldn't guarantee me a job as a CB. And I knew in order to get what I wanted, I would have to be a CB. Um,
Yeah. CBs are awesome. Oh man, we had them show up at one point. CBs, I love those guys.
yeah. So that's the only reason why I didn't go. And unfortunately, it does show when we as Army guys transition into the civilian world. The our counterpart knows, Army mechanics are not to the level of our civilian counterparts. The technology is 30 years behind what the civilian technology is. The tools that we use are 30 years behind than the computers that they're using out there. And they're not going to pay us equal wages. And the jobs that I was looking at was literally paying me what people make for changing oil. And to go from E6 running motor pools and being in charge of it to the low end guy servicing vehicles.
It's rough.
Yeah, man, it's a kick in your pride, you know.
Oh, it sure is.
And so
And
I
that's
opened,
yeah.
I opened a trucking company. That's what I did. So I owned a trucking company for 6 years. And then COVID hit, and I made a bad business decision. And I just about a year before, I decided to start hauling flatbeds, which is a mostly infrastructure type stuff. So
Yeah.
crane, bigger type stuff, roofing material, and that type of stuff. And a lot of that stuff wasn't moving. Construction wasn't happening and stuff during
Mhm.
COVID. You know, we would pick stuff up and get a couple hundred miles down the road, and then get called, "Hey, this plant just called. Their receiving area, somebody had COVID. We're closing down for 2 weeks. They're not going to receive nothing." So we'd have to turn around and go back, and then I wouldn't have any more loads for 2 days. It would take me 2 more loads because I'm an owner operator. It'd take me a couple more days to find loads to get me planned back out and get rolling again. And it was tough, as a new
That's
business.
rough.
Yeah, it was tough. So I ended up closing it, partially for that, and because of my mom's health. It was getting too hard to get back and forth to Iowa to help take care of her. So I made that choice. But I think a lot of military guys kind of came in terms, especially Army, they came in terms with that and decided to open up a business of some sort. And I think a lot of military guys discovered failure really quick because it's not easy, man.
No.
You know, there's a lot more to it than, if I always ask people after I learned what owning your business really is, and if you ask somebody, hey, why do you want to own your own business, and if they tell you it's so I can set my own schedule and work my own hours, you can already know they don't know nothing about running their own business, because you're working every minute. You're working because when you're
You
not
are
at,
the business.
when you're not at
Yeah.
work, you're at home thinking about work, because if you're not, your business is suffering. I'm saying that, man. So, my hat's off to anybody that is a fan of owning businesses, because there's a lot of stress to it.
There is.
Yeah.
And if you ain't growing, you're dying. Like, people are like, well, what do you mean? Like, we're comfortable. I'm like, well, then you are heading the way of the dodo, bro. Like,
Yep.
they're like, they just don't get it. And then sure enough, you see it fold a few years down the road.
I believe Blockbuster was comfortable too, and I believe Redbox was comfortable too, and
I have gotten very, and this is with everything though. I've gotten comfortable with being uncomfortable,
yeah, you have.
and that is like with some of this. I think you are podcast number 17
Mhm.
at this point, and this is all within a matter of a month and a half, now. And this whole thing down at Bragg, this is the first big speaking event type thing that I'm
Yeah,
doing. I've spoke in front of people, but not in this type of capacity, not with this type of weight.
yeah,
Um, but that's okay, and quite honestly, like even your failures and stuff, I've started to look at things really differently. And it's, if
good.
something's going really bad or you're having a terrible day or something's just not working out, you kind of got to step back and say, hey, what am I supposed to be learning right now? What
Yeah,
am I being taught? Like, and you take that tactile pause and you take a breath and you listen, and more times than not, you see, oh, okay.
yep,
Or you might not see it right away and you just got to drive on one foot in front of the other. But eventually, there's stuff like with this, there's no way this could have come out 10 years ago. No possible way. There was too many things that had to happen within myself,
mhm,
and with other people reflecting on it and whatnot for this to be able to be where it is now.
yeah.
And it happens when it's supposed to happen, and it happens, for a reason. So here we are.
Yep. So now in the book, um, I know you got your story in there, but some of this is other people's stories too, right?
A lot of this is other people's stories. It was actually as I was working on it, um, so the initial manuscript, okay, the first 60,000 words, I banged this thing out in 2 weeks. And the reason I know, right? Well, the initial manuscript, trust me, that this is not 2 weeks worth of work. Uh-uh. Um, that was from my end. And the reason why the sense of urgency and stuff, there was another book that came out about this deployment from another author. He's a Wall Street Journal author, by the name of Ben Kessling, and the book is Bravo Company. I thought it was a good book. I was like, man, when I took it out of the mailbox, I did not expect this. I took it out of the mailbox and I ripped the cover off it. And I was happy. I had been talking to people about it and I started crying. And I
Wow.
was just, what is going on? And I think it was because I realized that somebody was actually listening at that point to like what had happened.
Mhm.
And, you know, I, I read it and I had my own accounts down before. A lot of the guys had started to talk before this book was even out. Oh, I'm not getting a good feeling from this and this, and that. I'm like, guys, chill, man. He's a good author. Like, there's nobody better to tell our story. I mean, it's Wall Street Journal. He's a combat Marine. He's got combat experience.
Yeah.
He might not have been Army, and might not have been in the Arghandab River Valley, but, like, give this guy a chance, man. Read through it and stuff, and it just didn't resonate with the guys. Um, and I think part of it was there was some stuff that was, historically inaccurate, but at the same time, like, that guy could only put down what he was told,
Yeah.
and he was not able to interview, the access to interview everybody. There was guys with that whole, "Oh, he's a reporter. I don't wanna talk to him."
Yeah.
And nobody needs to hear this story. And I'm like, no, people do need to hear this story, man. If anything, I don't even at this, after this thing was done and whatnot, it's very affirming when these guys come back and they're thanking you for it, or you get the rundown of what they thought about it and the review of what they thought about it. That's what I care about. I don't care if some civilian gets on there and one stars it and is like, "Arr, baby killer," and this and that. So what? You're not my audience, man. Like, this isn't for you.
Yep.
And, coming around and writing this, I even called the author of that other book and was like, "Hey, man, you interviewed me. You heard my story. Like, do you think this is something that I should put to paper, number 1? And number 2, like, I don't want you to think that this is something I'm piggybacking off of. This is not That's not what this is." And he's like, "No, yeah, I think you should, put it down." And he gave me some advice as to, continuity and stuff, and we've stayed in touch, about everything. He actually just released his paperback, yesterday in Bravo Company. I'm like, "Spot on, man." Gave him the congratulations, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
Um,
He
but this
he's
one was
like
Yeah,
you
exactly.
should be
How
happy.
can you not Exactly, you know? And it's Yeah, that's another thing that needs to stop within the veteran community is people tearing each other down. We already have enough problems as it is
Yep.
to we need to be lifting each other up.
Yep.
Um, that's not the way.
I
And
agree.
I've told the guys too that, look, if there's things that rub you wrong in this book, or if I got something wrong, and they've seen this book, like all of First Platoon has seen this book already, and the guys that were involved in the other incidences, like I worked very closely with them, and we shot things back and forth to where some of it while writing it was compartmentalized to the specific squads that were in these instances
Mhm.
because I didn't want crosstalk happening and I didn't want it to muddle up people's stories and I wanted to get their specific ones. So, like, when I would go to interview somebody, I wouldn't tell them anything. I wouldn't let them see what I wrote yet. I'd be like, "All right, let's get your story down from the incident." And then I would compare it with mine,
Mhm.
or if I wasn't there for this particular one, although I was there for most everything. I was the RTO. So as an RTO,
Yeah.
you're the eyes on the battlefield, you're gonna be there. You're the radio, you're the commander's eyes. You call for help or you let them know what's happening. And it was a good position to be in. And like looking back, you're like, oh man, like maybe that's why I was RTO during that time. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I whatever the case made it writing it a little easier.
Um, absolutely, man. So I know like with the RTO position, there's clearances and everything that's required. What did you have to clear any of that stuff to write the
Oh
book?
yeah.
Did you?
Um well, no. Okay, so yes, I did. Like, so that was with this whole thing, with it being I had said with this other author's book, with Bravo Company that there was concerns as to historical accuracy and the fact that it was a narrow scoped story in order to tackle uh problems within the VA, dealing with veteran suicide and with some of the other issues out there. Um, which I mean, he did a good job at that. It was the audience it was meant for. He did great, I thought. Um, this one, like I was like, okay, so the guys want something historically accurate, like let's do it. And once we started dialing this stuff in and getting the more stories, I started getting back feedback like, man, you know, it was head and shoulders. The feedback was much better on this stuff than it was for the stuff that was just my own. And
Yeah.
I started realizing that, like, you're writing this. differently now because it's someone else's, and the amount of heart that started going into it, just pouring yourself into this thing because I don't want to fuck it up.
Yeah.
You know, that's the biggest thing with me during this is like, didn't want to mess up the story, so I held myself to the fire. That's
Yep.
as soon as I got that publishing deal from Casemate, and even that, I thought this was going to be something that was self-published, honest to God. I was just like, well, I'll put it out there for the guys and this and that. But I was like, but what if? And I was like, okay, so what military history publishers are out there? And I saw the list of publishers. I'm like, okay, like which ones are legit, which ones are really good, which ones can present a good story. Okay, and I narrowed it down to a few, and I sent out an email burst, and Casemate came back, and they're like, "Hey, we're having a roundtable in a week. I'd love to take this to it." I'm like, "What?" And 2 weeks later, I'm like, "All right, whatever," and I get this call, and they're like, "Hey, you're in." I'm
Wow.
like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, "Yeah, but the title of the book, we're not really sure of the title of the book, and the cover picture, you said you have a cover picture, but we're not really sure about, we'll see." And I'm like, "Look, the title stays and the cover picture stays, but here's the deal. I'll send you a concept of the whole thing, and I'll send you the story behind the cover picture." I sent this stuff out, and the very next day, I get a call from England, and they're like, "I get it. I understand now. What else do you want? What else can we do for you?" I'm like, so I asked for the moon. I told him, I was like, "Hey, the release date's gotta be October 31st," because crazy enough, it ended up on a Tuesday. And the significance behind October 31st is the fact that October 31st is the date of our first firefight with 1st Platoon within Helmand Province. So it's that battle by fire, and I was like, it just all fits, and I the
Wow.
odds and stuff of a Tuesday and that date and that being book launch day, and, like, there has been thing after thing after thing, like, where the guy, like, so the cover picture, when I first put out the concept, it was it was a Facebook photo.
Mhm.
I think it was, like, 300 kilobytes or something. I was like, "Oh boy, like, how are we gonna work with this?" I hope AI can really use this paintbrush here. But, in talking with the guys and stuff, I was able to track it down and actually talk to the guy that snapped the picture. As they were recovering the flag, one of the guys had the foresight to pull, and you can see it in the full picture. I actually have the full picture up, but you can see the camera pouch on this guy. You can see
Okay.
the camera pouch on there. And um, Sergeant Rodney Garcia grabbed the camera out of the pouch and snapped some pictures as they're pulling it out. And I got a hold of him, and he didn't have the originals. He's like, "I don't know. I think my mom has a hard drive or something." And, it just ended up like this. "Well, if I find it, can I use it?" He's like, "Well, yeah, just make sure it gets credited to me or something." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, not a problem, man." Like, "Okay, sure. I have no issue there. I just got to
Yeah.
find it." But it was one of the other guys there, Daniel Martin. And I guess through some of the hard drive sharing and stuff that happens out there it was. It was like a sharp, crisp, something like a 5 megabyte file. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And he got it out to me. And he had already done he had done that concept to where the flag was colored and everybody else was, grayed out. And I just loved it, and I was like, "Man, like, this is," and we took the original photo and we recreated that Photoshop effect and everything, and there you go. There's the cover of Damn the Valley. Um, and just through the whole thing, all of it's we pushed in so much historical. I mean, and I think that's actually the reason how I got Petraeus to write an endorsement on it, is he was the one that came in and replaced McChrystal while we were, in country. I mean, we had thing after thing happen. I mean, our battalion commander got removed, along with the Command Sergeant Major Burt Puckett. And that was that was something that just rubbed a lot of the guys wrong. Like, we would have gone through the gates of hell for those guys. That's what people don't understand, just the train up and stuff. But the fact that they were such a solid command team
Mhm.
and everybody knew it, even his replacement knew it. Like, uh, Lieutenant Colonel Jones, was now General Jones, was a good guy. But coming into that type of situation, to where he was actually supposed to take command of a unit in Alaska and was like called into the office last minute and like, hey, guess what? You're taking over Two Fury. Wait, what? Yeah, sorry to do this to you, but and to be thrust on like that, and he had to trust his battlefield commanders, and that's what he did. I mean, and we had, Bravo Company had Adam Armstrong, and he was out there just as much as us. You don't normally see that uh, from a commander, and especially in an area to where you have, the attrition rate and the casualty rate that we did. You don't see that. And he continues to do that. And matter of fact, like he's been there for the guys ever since then. And that's a hell of a thing.
Yep.
Hell of a thing.
It's one thing to be a leader, but it takes a special person to show they're a leader. You have
Deeds,
to.
not words.
Yep. Absolutely, man. Well, I can tell you, I can promise you one thing, man. I don't know if you can see it, but there's some books on the back of my shelf. Everybody that comes on, I buy the book, so I'll be using your list, and I'll be ordering a copy, and it'll go on my shelf as well. I've been
We
running.
sold out Amazon, right?
Did you really?
Yeah, I talked to the publisher and they're like, we are scrambling to get these back orders put out. We sold out the publisher a week before publication date. They
Wow.
had no more copies in their warehouse. On launch day, Barnes & Noble got down to 1 copy left. We sold out bookshop.org. Okay. And then, just the other day, that's the end of week 1. I got in with the publisher and I'm like, "Hey, like, what's going on? I'm seeing, Bookshop is out of stock and this and that, and I'm hearing Barnes& Nobles doesn't have any copies left. Like, what is the deal? I know Amazon's the big one for reviews, but, like, are we okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, so Amazon's a back order status now too." And I'm like, like, "What?"
Yeah.
So I have no idea what they ran for their first run. So I mean, I can't give you numbers and stuff, but um I think it's resonating with people. And honestly, like it's great to see that, but better to see better to see these reviews coming in when I notice it's from, the guys, or to have one of them call me. One of them called me at like 5:30 in the morning the other day, and it freaked me out because I was like, "Oh my God, what is this call?" Like,
Yeah.
this guy's on the West Coast, so I know it's like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning there. And he's like, "Hey, I got your book in the morning." He's like, "I just finished it." And he's like, "Thank you. It's exactly what I needed." And I'm like, "What?" Again, it just completely flipped, and it made my day, man. I mean, I had a smile from ear to ear the rest of the day, and I was just like, "Man," and he broke down while we were talking. It was just like, he described some of the stuff that he had been going through, and he's like, "I really needed to hear that stuff." And he's like, "When I hit that end page, man," he was like, it just all came out.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
man.
that right there, that's the reason. That is it. And that makes all this worth it. The year of pain and dealing with the editors back and forth and the deadlines and everything. And they were actually going to push this back 2 months. Because of I can't remember exactly. I think it was the shipping of the books. They were sending them from overseas. They were coming by boat. It wasn't going to make it in time. And stuff. And I'm like, "We have printing presses in the States." And they're like, "Well, they cost a lot of money." And I'm like, "I will make it up in volume." And well, sure enough, here we are. So
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That is awesome, dude. And I'm gonna tell you, I think you're the first author I've had on that has that side of the story. You know, there's been a few that were on that were self-published and a few that were actually published. But to have that kind of success, that, you know, congratulations,
It's
man.
it's
It's
not coming from me. This is from the guys, man. Like, these guys are reviewing it. These guys are, the people that get out there and buy it and review it. And I mean, these other guys, they know the story. Like, but I mean, I know there's civilians out there and there's other army guys getting this story. There's guys that have reached out from the guys we replaced, as
yeah,
well as the guys that came in and replaced us. And it's been crazy to hear these stories, and all of them have said nothing but thanks for it.
yeah.
And it's been great. It's been so good.
Yeah, man. That's awesome, you know. And that's one thing I love about this show, man. I always search for guests that, and when I see something that interests me, or a story that fascinates me, and when I came across your bio, man, I was like, yeah, he's got something, man. So, you know, I appreciate is there any other place other than your link that you want people to check out? Social medias or any place?
So, I mean, obviously you have the damnthevalleybook.com, and that will get you to all the, like, the Amazon links and Barnes& and Noble and everything, as well as all the different social ones. But on, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, it's all at Damn the Valley Book. And again, I post up daily, and I make sure that daily there's a picture. If there's other stuff, the book stuff that just they're kind of fillers and
Hmm.
stuff, but there's always something from deployment, daily out there. And it's eh, at some point it's going to have to be recycled, but we're not there yet. And it's more stuff is still coming in. More guys are actually hitting me up and being like, "Hey, I got more pictures." And it's been awesome. It's been so cool.
That is awesome, man. And that's the type of stuff that builds the camaraderie, man. You know, that's the stuff when you get out that the veterans need, you know.
I would actually say too is, Don, that so on Damn the Valley Book, there's a link, or there's a tab up there for the wall of stories. And that's another thing. Share your story. Put it out there. I don't have it to where it's gonna post up automatically because, I mean, hey, it's the World Wide Web, and who knows who's gonna send stuff in. But if
Yep,
you send it in, I'll look at it. And if it's I don't care if it's like super quality. It might be great. It might just be what somebody's looking for. But there's eyes on this right now. Put stuff out. There's someone that put some poetry out. I think someone sent a short story, you know, but that stuff, I will get your story out there, and that's what it's all about. And if someone wants to publish a book, I'll try and, I'm sure down the road, I'm going to hold a class on this stuff online, like a webinar, like, hey, these are the steps, and creating these frameworks for other vets out there. Be like, hey, look, I went through the frustration and the ass pain. Um, but now I can at least, as well as I do, if you give a veteran a no shit framework, like we have, like on the side of an AT4, hey, this is how you place it into operation.
yep,
If you give veterans a framework, they will follow it.
yeah,
They're very good at that.
yep. You
So the
are ab
possibilities are coming.
Yep.
They're coming.
And like I told you before the show started, you know, that's part of my nonprofit that I'm doing. So, you know, I may hit you up and ask you to come together and you know, I'll put you with
Please
some
do.
veterans and give them a class and maybe
Yeah.
some writing format type stuff and some tips and whatever, you know, to kind of help them, you know.
I'd
So
love to.
yeah,
Seriously. I'm not a professional writer, so I mean, I don't know about but I can give them process, and give them the end of getting it to market for sure.
and I
But yeah,
think
no, please reach out. Let me know.
where the majority of them have questions. You know, a lot of them have the how do I get published? How, you know,
Yeah,
what are the steps? You know, they have those kind of formatting questions. You know, let me figure out that template. You know, let me tell my story, and then after I get my story, what do I do with it?
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll
So,
get them there. We'll
yep,
get them there.
absolutely, man. Well, let me throw our ending up, and if you don't mind holding on for just a quick second, I got a few things. But hey, I appreciate everybody that sticks around. I believe our next show will be next week. So stick around. We'll see y'all next week. Y'all be safe. Take care. And we'll see you later.